Hey, this is Dr. Dwain Woode. Welcome back to day number 18 of my 100-day walk to consistency. I'm glad that you've joined me for this journey of growth, of improvement, of building, of setting ourselves up for success. Today we're talking about how do we reframe setbacks into opportunities. Let's walk and let's talk. I'll see you on the walk today. So what is a setback? A setback is any event that it disrupts, interrupts our progress towards a goal. It could be a missed opportunity. It could be something that happens as a result of illness. It could be a financial issue. It could be a relational issue, an interpersonal issue, something that disrupts our quest, if you will, and our progress towards what we're working on. Some examples of setbacks would be losing motivation, right? So something is going on and you are, for some reason, you've lost motivation because things haven't happened in the time that you expected them to happen. You could have experienced rejection for something that you wanted to do, and that causes a setback. In fact, I remember I was working on a project once, and I needed to get additional resources. So I approached a couple of friends, and I spoke to maybe 2 or 3, and the first one said yes, hey, I'm in, let's do it. But I got to the second one, and the second one was kind of hesitant, but decided to get involved. And then I got to the third and was in the process of discussing what my plans were when I got a call from the guy I spoke to second. And he was just very negative in his thoughts. He had rethought it and said, I don't think this is going to work. And so he started to give me all of these negative thoughts. And guess what happened? I internalized those negative thoughts, and I actually interrupted my conversation with the third person that I was talking to, and I really kind of junked that project. So that, in that case, that was a rejection that came to me, and that was a setback, right? It was unanticipated, and I allowed it to change what I was planning to do. I actually allowed it to derail me. But we'll talk more about how we change these setbacks into opportunities. Another example of setbacks would be hitting a plateau. So in our weight journey, in our walking, in our quest to control blood sugars, we can hit a plateau. And if we hit a plateau, sometimes that will turn into a setback because we're wondering, hey, we're doing the same thing, we're working in the same way, and why am I not having continued success in what I'm trying to do? So key points are that setbacks are a natural part of the journey. Setbacks are not abnormal. They don't indicate something wrong with you. They don't indicate that your plan is wrong, or you don't have the right resources, or you don't have the right whatever sometimes we tell ourselves. They are simply a part of the journey, and we need to see them as part of what we do. It's kind of like when we talked about failure, right? There are going to be things, regardless of what we do, that we're going to run into. One of my favorite stories to tell is that my son he plays basketball, and so they played. This was when he was much younger. And they were playing a team, and they were neck and neck, and the team finally won. And my son afterwards, of course, our team was very disappointed. And so my son said to me, he said, I don't understand. He said, we did everything right because they had followed the fundamentals. They were boxing out, they were guarding their man, they were rebounding. They did everything that we had taught them, everything that we said, hey, these are the things that you've got to do. And he said, well, we did everything right. I don't understand why we lost. And so the question I asked him, and I want to pose to you, is it possible to do everything execute everything perfectly and still not get the desired result? And unfortunately, the answer is yes. Let's take basketball, for example. One team was going to win. Somebody had to win. Okay? Even if we went into overtime, one of the teams was going to win. So it is possible to still do everything, execute, and still have setbacks. So that's the case here. And we've got to expect that setbacks are going to happen. They are a natural part of the process. And if we don't anticipate that, then we set ourselves up for lots of hurt. Okay? So the power of reframing. Remember, we're talking about reframing setbacks into opportunities. The power of reframing comes in that what we're doing is we're shifting our perspective. We're shifting our perspective on setbacks. Reframing a setback means that we are changing the way that we look at it. Notice that the thing did not change. What's changing is how we perceive it and how the story that we're telling ourselves about what happened, and basically shifting our frame. Even setbacks contain valuable lessons. Even setbacks contain valuable lessons. Remember, we said that failure is a feedback loop. Failure informs us. Failure helps us to refine. Failure helps us to think outside the box. It helps us to be resilient. All the things that we talked about before. Yeah, so setbacks are a way of refining and learning something valuable. Okay, embracing setbacks. We want to do that because it's a part of life. It's a part of the life process. Yep, it's a part of the life process. I would love to say that when we get into life, that we start out, we come up with our plan, we come up with our goal, and we put it into practice, and everything works perfectly according to the way that we planned it out. But we can plan, but we can't account for everything that will happen. And so it is possible that you still will have some setbacks, and that is just a part of what happens. It's a part of the process. It is not a indication of you, of your education or anything personally. It is just a part of what happens in life. And so you want to make sure that you are paying attention and that you're doing everything you can. I'm going to walk by like this. We're doing some construction right here. Just wanted to get that by. So here's a key thought. Successful people don't avoid setbacks. You say that again. Successful people don't avoid setbacks. Now, often, as we've mentioned before, we're taught, right, the process that everything has to be perfect. And if it's not perfect, then there's something wrong with us. And so by virtue of that, what we do is we try to avoid situations where we think we're failing. There's a interesting study that was done where they took students who were good students. I mean, they were A students, and they went in and they started congratulating them. Well, they broke them into a couple of groups, and they started congratulating them, telling them that they were good and I'm proud of you and you did a great job. And then the other group of these same students that were good, they praised them for the process that they went through in solving problems. Hey, I'm so excited that you found the right way to do that, or I like the way you thought about that, or I like the way that you put that together. Okay? And so what they found was the group that they talked about how good they were, the group that they told that they were inherently smart, inherently good, that group started doing worse in the future, worse on exams. And so they went back and they started looking to see why that was. Okay? Well, what has happened was that the group that bought into that if they did well, it was a reflection of themselves, they started avoiding situations that would not be successful. So they started avoiding the possibility of having a setback, the possibility of having a failure. And the other group that we praised, that had the process praised, that group continued taking risks. They continued looking at everything and considering all options. They didn't avoid. And so they actually grew and improved. Whereas the other group, they actually began doing an interesting thing. They started intentionally pumping themselves up, talking about how much better they were, right? And this is not boastful in this sense, but they overinflated their success. They overinflated what was going on. They overinflated what they had done because it was all about them. And they did not see setbacks as opportunities. So successful people don't avoid setbacks. They actually reframe them and use them as opportunities to set themselves up for success, as stepping stones, if you will, for success. Just checking to make sure there was not not a car behind me. So why are setbacks disguised as opportunities or disguised opportunities? Well, setbacks highlight areas for improvement. Here's that concept again. So when we have a setback, it may indicate an area where we can grow, where we need to make a change, where we need to make a pivot, where we need to be flexible, where we need to reevaluate. So setbacks are those opportunities that have been disguised. It's kind of like, the next time you encounter a setback, instead of focusing on the poor result, then look to see, well, what are some things that I can change? Use it as a feedback loop so that you can use that as a stepping stone, right? So setbacks are disguised because they allow us, or they are places where we can find areas of improvement. Setbacks build resilience. We talked about the same idea when we talked about failure, right? It's a resilience. It is resilience. It helps to build that part of you that says that I can have something go wrong and I could still be successful. Otherwise, we tend to equate our goodness, equate our personhood with the successes we've had and the failures we've had, or the setbacks we've had. If you had 10 failures or 10 setbacks and only one thing that worked out, then I'm 10 times worse or 9 times worse, right? So we want to change that. And then setbacks foster creativity and innovation. Creativity and innovation. Thinking outside the box. I love talking to my wife because she has an uncanny ability to look at a situation and come up with possible solutions. Sometimes, particularly if I'm in myself, if I'm in my feelings, if I've looked at something and it hasn't quite gone the way I thought it should go, if I'm not careful, then I'm kind of tunnel vision. And so I'll go to my wife and I'll say, hey, and I'll tell her the situation. And, she'll pause for a minute and we'll think about it. And she'll say, okay, have you thought about da-da-da-da-da? And she'll rattle off a couple of things that I had not considered. So she has that ability. But setbacks can foster creativity and innovation. It requires you to think outside the box. It requires you to put all of your faculties into process, into work, and to figure out, how do I do this thing? One of the concepts, and this is a whole nother discussion. So my son, I was talking to him recently about something that he wanted to do, and he said, "Oh, I can't do that because I don't have the money. I don't have enough money." And while I'm not trying to be fiscally irresponsible, one of the things I said to him is, when you have a situation like this, the question or the comment you should be making to yourself is not, "I can't do this because I don't have the money." It is, how do I bring the resources to bear so that I can do it? Notice the difference. One says I can't because I don't have. That's the fixed mindset. And the other one says, "Hey, I'm going to do this, but how am I going to get it done? What resources do I need to put into place? What thought process? What process? Where do I need to go? How do I make this happen?" And in our last session, we talked about positive mantras. And you guys have to excuse me, it's raining, and so I've got this, or it's drizzling a little bit. So the stories that we tell ourselves create opportunities for us, okay? So setbacks allow us to be creative and to think outside the box, and to get into a space where we're actually looking for and finding resources and ways to do the things that we want to do, okay? So how do we reframe setbacks as opportunities? All right, we've talked about what they are, how they work. How do we reframe them? Number one, you want to change the story you tell yourself. Man, these concepts, they are ingrained, they're universal, they are ubiquitous, they're everywhere, okay? The story that we tell dictates our behavior. I think I've mentioned to you, well, guess what she calls the model. There's a famous coach, and she teaches that things that happen to us don't have a meaning until we attach a meaning to it. Though they don't have a result until we attach a meaning. So some event happens, and it is there in isolation by itself. When we attach a meaning to that, then that meaning gives us a feeling. And our feeling, once we have a feeling, then we act on the feeling, so we have a behavior, and the behavior creates a process, and that process leads us to a destination. So if that is a negative, if we attach a negative to that event, then we feel negatively, we behave negatively, we implement negative processes, we implement negative behaviors, and we get negative outcomes. If we attach a positive, so we reframe, right, that as an opportunity, then we feel more positively, we implement positive practices, positive procedures, we behave positively, and we get a positive outcome. Notice the same event occurred, but now we have told a story that takes that event and puts it in a positive context, a positive light, so that we now have reaped the benefit of the positivity. So the story that we tell ourselves, very important. So how do we reframe setbacks into opportunities? Then we've got to change the story that we're telling ourselves. When you experience a setback, write down your thoughts about it, and then start processing, right? Start creating a different story around that thought. Number two, we want to focus on what we can control. What we can control. And I'm trying to remember now the serenity prayer. Is it, God grant me the serenity to change the things I can, accept the things I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference. Yeah, there's some things that are just outside, and I'm paraphrasing, by the way. I am understanding more and more in my life that there are some things that are just outside of my control. And I'll tell you, if you followed any of my story, you know that for a large portion of my life, I was depressed, I was overweight, I had uncontrolled diabetes, and all of that stemmed from the things in life that were going on that I didn't reframe. Okay? It put me in a spot, it put me in a space where I was just wallowing. I was just spiraling down. And there were some things that I couldn't control. And so in order for us to be successful, in order for us to be able to reframe and rethink and see opportunities, we've got to understand there's some things outside of my control. Like right now, when I started, got out for lunch, and I said, hey, I'm gonna go do my video. And I stepped outside. It was raining, right? And it's still drizzling a little bit. It's a little overcast. And I can't control that. So I could wait until the sun comes up, and it's supposed to rain later on today. But this video would not have been done, right? And we're talking about consistency. So it doesn't matter what's going on around me, right? I've got to control the things I can control. I can control getting out, and I can control walking.
Time, 30 minutes, 2 seconds. Total distance, 1.0 miles. Average pace, 30 minutes, 1 second per mile. Split pace, 30 minutes, 1 second per mile.
And so you heard my app reading out the stats for this walk so far. But yeah, I can't control everything. In fact, the question you should be asking now is if you're doing this and the weather's going to be changing. It's changing seasons. It's going to get cold out. It's going to get windy out. It's going to get... What are you going to do? What are you going to do on the days when the weather is not cooperating? Because you're not going to be able to control it. So what's your plan? What are we going to do? But understanding the things that you can control, very important in terms of reframing setbacks. And then practice patience and persistence. Patience and persistence. Patience we've talked about, right? So things are not going to happen in the timeline that we always want. They may take longer. But we can't give up. We can't throw this out. In fact, the only time when failure occurs is when we give up. The only time when setbacks become permanent is when we give up. The only time that we are not able to overcome setbacks, reframe, see opportunities, set up a stepping stone, create a new process, whatever it is when we give up. So patience. It takes patience to say, hey, this is not coming yet, but it's coming. I'm not there yet. I've not done it. I've not achieved it. I've not reached it, but it is coming, right? So the whole thought of visualization also comes in there, right? And persistence. Persistence. I was giving a talk to a group just a couple of days ago, and one of the questions that came up was, how do you know whether this is something you should go after? Like, how do you really know? Like, that thing that I want, that book that I want to write, that song that I want to write, that house that I want to buy, the business I want to start. How do you know whether this is something, not that you should go after, but you're in the process of going after it and it's not quite working? How do you know that you should continue? And it takes a lot of evaluation. Is this your thing? Is this the thing that you know that's in you that's got to come out? Every time you talk to somebody, there it is. Every time you pause for a moment and you think about something, there it is. Every time you are having a discussion, somehow it comes back to this, right? That's in you, and it's not out yet, right? So you got to know, you got to understand, and we'll talk more about some of this I just want to throw this in here. Then you've got to look at the community around you, right? Who are those people that you trust? And say to them, hey, this is what I want to do. Do you think is this my strength? Is this the way I need to be? Now, this one you've got to be careful of, because there's sometimes that your vision is so strong, your vision is so lofty, that there are people that are around you, and that's why you got to be careful who you have around you. They may not see that vision, okay? And then the other thing is, what is the cost, not just to you, but those people around you? Now, this is a hard one. Now, let me say this, okay? Many of us have families. Many of us are in relationships. And the question that we have is, what is the cost to the relationship? Now, this is a whole nother evaluation that we're going to have to do, another session that we're going to have to do. But there are things that I've done that were good things. I mean, I achieved the goal, but sometimes I look back and say, was it worth the cost to the people around me? All right, and so you've got to answer that question. But you want to develop patience and you want to develop persistence, because that is the only way that we are able to reframe setbacks as opportunities. If you've hit a plateau, for example, right, in your weight loss, rather than giving up, recognize that you may need to evaluate and say, hey, are there some things that I need to look at? Am I doing a good job with my food? Am I doing a good job with my sleep? Am I doing a good job with all those things we talk about in terms of weight management? There we go, let's come back down. All the things we talk about in terms of weight management, do I need to look at those again, right? Here's an opportunity for me to improve and for me to increase and for me to get better. Awesome. All right. So, we never leave without giving you a challenge. And so here is our challenge for today. What I want you to do is I want you to identify a setback that you've had. Identify something that you have recently experienced. I want you to write it down. Always we're writing, we're journaling, right? What is the setback teaching you? I want you to start looking at that. What is the setback teaching you? What have you learned? What have you seen? And what are you able to do? So find the setback, something recent. Go ahead and write it down. What are you learning? And then what opportunities do you see hidden in it? What's the setback? What are you learning? What opportunities do you see? You want to outline those. And then I want you to take one action today that moves you in that direction. Remember, evaluating, talking, writing, all that's great, but action is where the money is. What action are you going to take? What are you going to do today to help you go in that direction, right? Remember, setbacks are a normal part of life, and we want to reframe them. We want to change them. We want to use them as stepping stones to take us in that direction. So remember, setbacks don't have to be stumbling blocks. They can be stepping stones. When we reframe setbacks as opportunities for learning, for growth, for creativity, we open ourselves to new possibilities. Every setback contains valuable lessons that we can use to propel ourselves forward if we choose to see them that way. As always, this is Dr. Dwain Woode. So glad that you're here with me. That's Wood with an E. The E stands for Endocrinology. Here I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your health and your life. Hey, we're building better versions of ourselves. We'll see you on the walk tomorrow for my 100-day walk to consistency. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.